George Russell's performance in 2023 was one of the biggest disappointments of the season. After showing so much promise in 2022, he really struggled to keep up with the more experienced drivers ahead of him, and his position in the Drivers' Championship reflected that. He has blamed the team for his poor performance, but the F1 commentary team have blamed Toto Wolff for the team's failure. Today, I'll check out the post-mortem on Mercedes' 2023 season and explain why there's some optimism around the team going forward. Let's get started. George Russell failed to live up to his promise in 2023. His first season at Mercedes had been so impressive with 8 podiums, including a race win, in a car that really wasn't good enough to fight for podiums most of the time. He beat his 7-time World Championship winning teammate in the Drivers' Championship as well, though Hamilton's early season bad form could be attributed to experimenting with the car. But George really struggled to show the same level of performance last season. He finished 8th in the Drivers' Championship, 59 points behind his teammate, and that's only the start of the metrics that he fell short of Hamilton in. Lewis beat him in 15 of the 22 races, securing 6 podiums to George's 2 on the way. Toto Wolff has admitted that he will need to have some awkward conversations with Russell about his performance to make sure it doesn't happen again in the coming season. Everybody needs some feedback. He's a very strong character, and he came out of the summer very strong. He changed his approach a little bit, and that was good, and then it swung the other way around, and Lewis performed extraordinarily well. The move to Mercedes from Williams must have been hard on the young British driver. While George was waiting for his chance at the Silver Arrows, he had to watch Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas pick up wins with ease on a regular basis. His frustration with his position at the backmarker team was evident when he clashed with Bottas at Imola in 2021, hitting the Mercedes driver on the head after he caused a collision, ending both their races. George then went to the media saying that Valtteri should never have been back in the pack and battling against a Williams because he was in a Mercedes. When George did finally get his move to Mercedes, the regulations changed and they were no longer in a position to easily win races anymore, though he did taste F1 victory in that first season in Brazil. The move to Mercedes was his dream move as well, but it will certainly have failed to have met his expectations. But Russell is optimistic that his team can turn things around, probably keen to experience some of that Mercedes dominance that he witnessed as he worked his way up through the junior categories. He explained why he's confident that Mercedes can deliver the goods, demanding that they avoid making the same mistakes again. Mercedes has been working on the new W15 concept for a long time, and there's been so much due diligence gone into that concept, he said. Whereas I think last year, it was all a little bit rushed. We didn't have all the information to hand, and we may have jumped to a couple of conclusions without thoroughly going through the consequences. But we learned when the car hit the ground this year that we made a step forward in some regards, but it came with a lot of baggage, and we hadn't taken that into consideration. While Mercedes may be overhauling their car for 2024, they have a huge way to go to catch a Red Bull car that will essentially be heading into its 3rd season. While the parts will be new, the concept has stayed the same, meaning it will be far more refined than whatever Mercedes brings. And Russell is aware of that. The fact is, we've got to close a huge gap. The Red Bull dominance this year is probably the greatest. I think statistically, it is the most dominant car ever, so we've all got a huge task on our hands. But I'm going into next year with an open mind, but definitely confident we won't fall into some of the same traps we did last year. While Russell will be keen to help Mercedes return to championship contention, his greatest competitor will always be his teammate. Lewis Hamilton is a 7-time world champion, and statistically the most successful F1 driver ever. George set expectations for himself sky high when he beat Lewis in his first season at the team, but managing that more than once was always going to be a Herculean task. Going into his 6th season in the sport, Russell isn't a rookie anymore. He might improve in the future by small margins, but what we see is pretty much what we're going to get at this point. If he makes silly mistakes, then he's probably going to carry on making them for the rest of his career. If he's inconsistent, then that inconsistency probably won't go away. 2024 is a year that he can really prove to everyone that he can be on Lewis's level and compete for world championships. If he can't, then that's okay. Hundreds of F1 drivers haven't been good enough to win world championships, but now is the time for him to prove that he can be one of the few who can. Speaking at the end of 2023, he said, "I've been on Lewis's level on average throughout this year, and I'm not satisfied with just being on his level. I want to be ahead of him, but I've also got to be realistic. I'm going up against the greatest driver of all time. He's definitely not a bad benchmark. And I think quality statistics, if you include sprint races, were exactly the same. And pace-wise, were generally the same as well, so there are positives. And to be honest, I prefer to be sat here without the results, but with the pace, rather than saying, oh, we lucked into a result here, or we lucked into a result there, when actually I was a 10th or 2 off the pace." I'm sure many of you will have an opinion on Russell's claim that he's on Lewis's level, so while I talk about Toto Wolff and why some of the sport's biggest personalities have blamed him for Mercedes' struggles, head down to the comments and give me your opinion on George. Mercedes' 2023 season had a shocking beginning when Toto Wolff went to the media after the first qualifying session to publicly say his team had failed to make a good car. Wolff is a volatile character, but the way he ranted about Mercedes' shortcomings after only the first competitive session of the season was incredibly surprising, especially when he's meant to be the leader in the team. On the Sky F1 podcast, pit lane reporter Ted Kravitz admitted to being taken by surprise by Wolff's reaction to Mercedes qualifying in Bahrain and claimed Wolff, as team principal, must take responsibility for the team's worst season in more than a decade. We don't really know why he did sign off on the sister of the bad car, which is how Lewis Hamilton described it. W14 was the sister of W13, and they were both not great cars. Toto must have signed it off. As a leader, he could have said, "I disagree, let's go with the Red Bull concept." But for whatever reason, they didn't. He signed it off, and then that very first session, I remember the interview vividly, coming out so strongly, and it took me aback when he said it. He said, "This car is weak, it's bad." This was after qualifying, the first race. I'm slightly thinking that it wasn't quite the calm, assured Toto leadership that we've seen. Toto's explosion after that first qualifying session in 2023 was unlike anything I and many other people had ever seen in Formula 1. Something about Mercedes' uncompetitiveness just broke him. He hasn't been in Formula 1 that long, and his first ever active role in a team was at Mercedes, where he had the chance to shadow Ross Brawn, one of the sport's best ever leaders, for a couple of years, before taking over the Mercedes team just as their powers peaked for the new turbo hybrid engines in 2014. Sky Sports' David Croft, speaking to Ted, believes Wolff has become more reactive in his decision-making since Mercedes' fall from grace, adding, "I don't think we saw the calm, assured Toto leadership at all times last year. And I think if you're talking leadership, was his leadership proactive or reactive? Was he reacting more to situations than being proactive, guiding the destiny of his own team? And the decision not to get rid of the sister car long before it came onto the track meant that at the early stages, a lot of it was very reactive. That little technical shuffle around was reactive. And one of the strengths of Mercedes since 2014 has been they're not following a trend. They're plowing their own furrow for others to follow. And that's not the case at the moment. It seems from the outside. Whether Wolff can lead a team to the front instead of just keeping them there is going to be a big question that needs answering in the coming years. If Mercedes can return to championship contenders, then he'll prove his worth as a team principal. But if he can't, and he continues to explode in the media when faced with adversity, then those questioning his abilities will only get louder. Part of the problem for Wolff is the 2026 rule changes. Formula 1 will be completely overhauling the car design as well as the engines in 2026. The FIA have banned teams from working on those new designs until 2025, which means this season they'll all be focused on the current cars, but as soon as midnight tolls on the 31st of December 2024, the teams will likely switch development to the next generation of cars. That means that if Mercedes haven't got it right this winter, or they fail to improve throughout the 2024 season, then 2025 will be a bad year as well. Mercedes technical director James Allison said it's imperative the W15 hits the ground running to maximize the team's success for the next two seasons. It's a new season, and we have to make sure we get out of the starting blocks well, he said to motorsporttotal.com. The car will be completely new, and it's doubly important that the car is good for 2024. The new 2026 rules are slowly casting their shadow over us, and we have to build the car for 2025. The 2025 car will therefore be closely related to the 2024 car, so we need to focus on developing a car that can be competitive in both world championships by 2026. It isn't a long wait now to see what Mercedes have managed to do over the winter break, but will it be enough to challenge Red Bull and help Hamilton or Russell fight for a world championship? Or are Mercedes' title-winning days gonna have to wait until at least 2026? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.